Welcome to the Neophytes of Narratology, the internet's most pretentious and pseudo-intellectual pursuit since, perhaps, Nietzsche's thus podcast Zarathustra, or Camus' renowned Vlog of Sisyphus. While lesser men aspire to stand on the shoulders of mere giants, we at the Lost Signals will accept nothing less than titans. So join us as we delve into the fundamentals of narrative nuance and critique the critics who proclaim to know the universal qualities of effective storytelling.
Hello and welcome back to the Neophytes of Narratology. My name is Steve-O and I am joined by Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Hello.
And Scott Thurlow.
Hey there.
And we are here today talking about another in our TED Talk series, Elif Shafak, who did a talk called The Politics of Fiction, where she basically spoke about the idea of identity politics in fiction and in, life in general. Being expected to write certain things, being expected to fill your niche in a society, and
based on the society that you come from.
Right, and we're going to kind of speak about what she talked about in her TED Talk. So, I guess to get it started, she kind of went into her personal life very briefly at the beginning, and talked about her mother and her grandmother who raised her. Her mother became an ambassador, I believe.
A diplomat of some sort?
A diplomat.
Yes.
And so she kind of went all over the world. She said that the one constant that she had was her creativeness and being able to come up with these different stories, which she started doing at a very young age. So I guess I'm going to kick it out to you guys. What did you think of her in general?
I was kind of on the fence. Maybe exactly 50% I agreed with some of the things she said, and 50% I fully disagreed. Mm-hmm. I think we'll speak upon probably the ones that Ian probably agrees with me on a couple of points. But I'll start off with the positive, I guess. So yeah, she sort of goes through her biography, etc. But one of the things, because of that, she was not a natural English speaker. She had to learn English later and writes in it as well as in her native language. So the
Turkish,
one thing, yes. Sorry, indeed.
I should have said that.
The thing that she said that I did agree with, that was interesting, that I sort of think about a lot, is that when you're learning a new language, there's sometimes a gap between wanting to express yourself and being able to within that language. I thought that was very fascinating. That was a point that I think was possibly you don't encounter that as much, but it's still there, and it's if not a pertinent to fiction writing, but although it's pertinent to philosophy in general, as we discuss here on narratology. So I thought that was a really good point she raised as a general first impression.
To that point, I think it was interesting when she said that, her writing in her native language was very... I think she said it felt like it flowed
more emotional.
And
Turkish
it was emotion. Yeah, it was emotional, and and when she writes in English, it seems more logical and
she said
mathematical.
Languages, although in the study of linguistics are structured similarly, they can make comparisons. There are quite variances in the way grammar works, the way the rhyme works. And I feel that she plays Turkish is a lot more, quite a bit more poetic. Where, again, English is being a compilation of all these different languages over the course of history, comes across both is a very hard language to grasp.
Yes.
Because the rules
if
are
you didn't
all
grow up
over
with
the
it,
place.
Of course, which she did not.
And she feels it's very mathematical, which kind of surprised me since it's so slapstick.
Well,
slapdash.
I think the idea was that it wasn't necessarily which languages they were. It was that she's a native speaker. She speaks Turkish, and so that's where her ideas, that's where her more emotional ideas or poetic ideas are allowed to thrive. When she's writing in English, she has to kind of debate over every word, whether that's the correct word or not. And I think that would be for anybody writing in a language that's not their natural
it's a broad
language.
point, of course. Not specific, as you said, to any one language or two. Just that learning a new one that is not your native one, whatever one you grew up on, if you will, that sort of divide exists, which is something you may not always think about or consider.
So I think one of the most interesting points that she brought up was this idea of communities of like-minded people kind of create cultural ghettos that limit your thinking, where if you get outside of that,
at least,
right, or if you get outside of that, then you are able to, that type of thing breeds stereotypes, where if you get outside of that, you can kind of break those stereotypes a little bit.
Very good point, but you never gave me an attempt to give my first impression.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which,
well, here it is now.
I wanted to say that she was a very good storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invested, even in the disagreements, I was invested in her entire story. She's speaking in English, which isn't her first language, but she has a grasp of it, a very confident grasp of it, and that came across. And I mean, it was a 20-minute piece, and it flew by for me.
Yeah.
So I have to give credit for that.
Sure.
So, but you were just bringing on the point of, in a sense, the isolation that
it's the internet thing.
Well, she does two different types of communities. So, like, the first one she brings up is communities of like-minded, where everybody has the same kind of ideas. And I guess
they're reinforcing each other.
If you want to start with that one, and then we'll talk about these communities that are more widespread, more diverse. However, they kind of ghettoize themselves into whatever their
there's a
nationalities were.
Point I want to make, because maybe I misinterpreted her for this, but she, from what I gathered, she was saying that it's the author that should try to branch out and break down these barriers. But I would argue that the onus is on the individual within the group itself to find works outside of their comfort zone.
Right.
And you as an artist, no matter how much you try to expand, you can't force a person to adopt an idea that they, if they're hesitant to it, if they're xenophobic, if they are... Sure. One of my favorite movies is Guess Who's Coming Dinner, which was revolutionary at the time when it came out, for like bringing up interracial marriage at that point. But again, it'll reinforce the ideas of the people who want to get that, but you're not going to be able to change people's minds who aren't willing to accept the message at all.
No, I like that point, especially the fact that you said that, or where you raised that it's some of it is on the artist/author, but the other, like, some of it is also on the audience, which I would agree with. But as I take her point to mean that she made definitely a number of references to the fact that fiction, storytelling itself, can transcend those sort of isolated pockets, right? And if it can achieve that, then it can break down stereotypes and adversity or animosity between perhaps groups that were pocketed into that mindset already and were almost committed to like always being there. Like you said, Steve-O, reinforcing your own ideology. If you talk to the same people who believe everything you believe, there's no challenge there.
Right.
It's just positive feedback.
There's no reason to change the way that you're thinking. Yeah, I think that basically what you're saying, Ian, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that where you think that she's saying that it's on the author to break out from your individual pockets, and maybe I'm extrapolating a little too much, but like you're saying that she thinks that authors shouldn't write what they know. And she does, in fact, say that at some point.
Yes, she says that as an outright line. I think that she is defending her style here. I don't take it as like gospel that like she's saying that if you're an author, you should not write what you know. But I think that she's defending her own style of not writing what she knows and being expected to.
No, I agree with that. When she said that, why should I have to make my main character a Turkish woman?
Right.
Just because I'm a Turkish woman. I completely agree with that point. But I also understand that in a lot of senses, she's not a Turkish woman. I don't mean to take that away from her, but she spent a large majority of her life traveling the country. Yes, she had...
The world.
The entire world. And she has lived in Istanbul to Arizona, all over the world, and
She was
grew
commuting
up-
between Istanbul and
Yes.
Arizona at one point. That was
and
quite the commute.
like she is a global individual.
Mhm.
So she has when she's talking about identity politics, her identity is global.
Yeah.
And like I think she's making the argument, but she's writing what she does know. So
That's exactly the point I was waiting to make, or that's what I said. I just pointed out what I liked about what she said. That's what I disliked the most, because it seems so obviously hypocritical, if though not on purpose. But I mean, the thing about it is you sort of can't escape it. So her thesis was somewhat what you said.
Mhm.
Maybe we should rethink about having write what you know as the number one rule of writing fiction. Okay, that's fine. But it's almost like a tautology that you're going to write in some way as an author. What you write is probably based on your experience of who you are and in what culture.
Right.
So her point was like, yes, we should try to break out from that, expose ourselves to more cultures, and storytelling is a way to do that, and to tell better stories. If you do one, you'll do the other better, and vice versa. Sure, but nevertheless, you're still going to be rooted in who you are as an identity, even if you resent the fact that your audience sort of expects you to represent that culture or whatever it may be as an individual.
I kind
You
of
can't escape it, is I guess what I'm saying.
I kind of think the point she should have been making was almost the Hemingway style of writing, which is he went out and experienced a whole lot of stuff, and then and could then speak to other cultures and write as
Sure,
but based on because he went out and experienced it, just like she can because she's had a lot of experiences. If you want to be an author, you should go out and seek the new experiences,
seek stories that you can tell. Like, yeah, no, I just found that little like off-putting. I didn't think it gelled quite so well, based on the point she was trying to make, but based upon a perception to me that is obviously going to be true of anyone.
So I think perhaps her globetrotting nature has maybe taken her ideas down a notch in your guys' head. But I would like to point out that
No, not necessarily. That's not quite what I'm saying, but go on.
But I would like to point out that she said that from the time that she was 7 years old or 8 years old or whatever she said, she never wanted to write about herself. She got a journal
Yes, sure.
from her mother
She
to
did say
journal
that.
to journal about her life, and she was like, I never wanted to do this. And like, maybe this wasn't explicitly said, but what I got out of it was, if you want to be a writer, if you want to tell stories, or if you are interested in stories of the world, perhaps you need to go and break out of your own bubble and go see those other things.
But
It'll probably make you a better writer. Yes, I agree to that.
But
at
her
least.
entire viewpoint is within the bubble she exists in.
Yeah, that's also what I'm getting at here.
No, it's within the bubble that she has created for herself.
Yes,
Yes, but it's still a bubble. Is the point?
Yeah, she's
Everything is a bubble,
Yeah,
though.
like, exactly. See, that's the trouble here. Like, this is the crux of
Got bubble trouble.
Yes, the crux of it, like, yes, jokingly, is that. But I'm just saying, no one is going to escape that, whether or not you're even an author. It doesn't matter. Like, your entire worldview is, of course, influenced by what you have experienced.
But is that an important distinction in what she's saying? Here's the question.
I think she made it out to be one.
Well, here's the question. She is saying that you should write about things that on the surface, she's saying you should write about things that you don't know about. When she's writing these things, I don't think that she's trying to say that she doesn't go and do research on them or go to other
that's not
places
what I'm
and go
saying
find
either,
these
but-
other things that are going on and then write about them. What she's saying is that she was in a place that was very insular
Yes.
originally.
Yes.
And then she got out of that. I mean, granted, not even of her own choice when she was a child, but she got out of that, saw a larger group in which the larger group was still insular in its own little
in its own
divisions.
way. I get all of that.
But she was trying to take those stories from all those other points of views that were insular and trying to make these different groups see the points of views of other people.
That's all fine. I'm going to use one of Ian's hated phrases, but it seems as if she's trying to have her cake and eat it too in some way. Like, it's really hard to describe this, what I find off-putting about it, because it's almost like cognitive dissonance as well.
Mm-hmm.
One point makes sense, yes, and the other one makes sense. But put together, they don't match up. They don't gel as well as, it seems to me, as what she's trying to get at.
Have any of you read The Kite Runner?
I have not.
I know of it.
Nope.
It was a fantastic piece written by a Afghan American writer about, like, in a sense, like, the history of Afghanistan in this, like a brief period of time.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Her experiences growing up there, fictionalized, but it was very, very honest. It was like it had such authenticity. It taught me quite a bit about his world. I would rather read an honest piece that is. I mean, you can write it. No matter what you're writing about, it has to have some level of
it's grounded
experience
in reality,
and grounded.
Exactly.
To give that authenticity.
That's exactly the point.
You can write about a person in another land that isn't you or your gender or your sexuality or your ethnicity, but you have to have experience with them to make it seem to add that level of authenticity. So,
well, as far as that goes in terms of story writing, I think that's where research comes in. I think that's where learning your reference points comes in. Like, yes, I can say I'm going to write a story about, some Parisian guy, moving to India tomorrow. And if I do that, I need to do a shitload of research on things that I don't know anything about right now. But if I actually go and do that research, then I think that you can write about it with some authority. And granted, it's never going to be
as
the story of me,
sure.
Parisian guy who went to India, because that never happened to me. I'm not that person. But as long as you know what you're writing about, as long as you learn about what you're writing about, I think that you can write a good story about it. You don't need to write about yourself to make it a good story.
Yeah, no, I get that. Again, I understand that's what she was getting at, and you seem to agree with her. It's just that you can't divorce one from the other at the end of the day. It's going to be influenced in some way, whether or not you realize it, I think.
Right. No, of course, you're going to write from your own point of view.
It seems to me, I interpreted her as she's trying to get at that in fact, you can do that, and that's what we should aim towards. I don't agree to that per se.
I think she has honest intentions.
Yes.
And I like her intentions quite a bit. I just think that
the methodology,
her experience has left her with kind of a little bit of a stuck in her own circle, and
maybe, ironically, if you will, yes.
But I mean, what would you? So, what would you suggest to get out of that circle?
Well, I think that really to break to
I'm not
broaden
sure if
the
you
scope
can fully is my point.
But if her intent is to broaden the scope of people, I think introducing people to authors who are interesting, who had experiences that weren't yours. Like, yes, fiction can break down these barriers, but it has to have that integrity and honesty there to actually make an effective method of breaking that barrier. So instead of saying, I'm going to write about someone who grew up in this environment, which I have no first-hand experience, I would rather find an author who did have that first-hand experience and promote him or her for that role, and say that this is what this is a great book about this topic.
I appreciate authors who do that. However, I also appreciate authors who try to step outside of their own lives, their own roles, and kind of figure out a way to tell a human story in a setting or of a character who is not them or where they are from. And I think that both of those have something to attribute to add to.
There's a validity to that book,
to literature. Sure. Anyway, I'm gonna say that if you guys have anything left to add to this conversation, please go now.
I will end with this, based on what we just said. I am interested in writing about fantastical, supernatural, Lovecraftian things, so I'm going to go call up Cthulhu and get some quotes from him.
I read a James Patterson book once, by mistake.
Was that enough?
And he was writing about teenagers, and he was trying to make give references to what it would be like to be a teenager, and it rang as
hollow as it would be. Yeah.
And again, I wasn't that invested in the story to begin with, but that broke it completely for me. And that's a bad example for an honest writer. But I think that the point is that there needs to be integrity there.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there can't be a good book about teenagers written by somebody over the age of 40.
Sure, not necessarily. Just it's harder the more removed you are from whatever it is. I think is our point here.
You can bring up, I'm sure whatever.
Well,
This is a conversation that could last hours, so
Yes.
we're not gonna go there. But I'm just gonna wrap it up by saying I thought it was an interesting talk. Yes, you guys bring up very good points, and I don't 100% agree with her on everything, but I think that Elif, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is did a good job. As Ian said earlier, a very good storyteller, and did a good job kind of telling her own story, despite the fact that she was telling everyone to tell someone else's story.
Exactly. See, that's what I find the most funnily ironic thing about it. Even though, yes, it was a good talk overall.
This is actually, I think, of all of the TED Talks we've done so far, this could have been the one we could extend the most.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't even go into like the entire like Sufism and
Sure,
Rumi. There's a lot here, and you can see it's very thought provoking. We're debating a lot. I think this is one of the better ones we've watched so far.
There is. I would very much suggest at least giving it a listen and seeing what you think about it. But we are out of time here, so I am Steve-O signing off, and I have been joined by Jonathan Niemeser
Good night.
and Scott Thurlow.
See you in the next story.
Have a good one.
This has been the Neophytes of Narratology. We hope that you've experienced an epiphany or two of the literary nature, but only metaphorically, of course. Music by Christopher Morgan, editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Mazer.